Yes. So, greetings, everyone. Let me make sure I can switch over to this glorious PowerPoint. Hold on. Let me make sure this is all in order here. All right. So while this is booting up, basically, yes, I'm going to be your captain on this journey through the mind, this fun, glorious trip of figuring out what is going on with our mindset, what can be helpful, what is not as helpful. So I'm hoping that this is one of those conversations like it's been in the past that, some of these things kind of click, right? Because I'm going to be going over a lot of the norms of the issues that just seem to be what normal humans go through in terms of work stressors or figuring out, about feeling stressed about not getting enough sleep, all those kinds of things. So let me switch over to the presentation and we'll get right to it here.
One of the things that I always tell people about while you're doing that is the medical diagnosis of insomnia really means this in layman's terms: the inability to escape or manage your own thoughts. Would you agree with me?
Yeah.
Okay. I love that because it's like, wow, that seems so simple. Because insomnia, if you have it,
that is a really wonderful way. Yeah, when it comes down to it, a lot of times insomnia is switching over, there we go. A lot of times anxiety is derived specifically from issues with thinking, but it can be more so of some of the more quote unquote sleep hygiene issues or sleep regulation and that kind of thing. So I love what you said though, Laura, because that definitely makes a lot of sense in terms of when the cognitive side of things is what is driving the difficulty with falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up too early. So we're going to be going all through the cognitive side. So to start off, friend or foe, right? Our mind can be both. Sometimes within the same day, other times it's more one or the other. But really this is about understanding patterns, figuring out when they're happening, and like we'll talk about in a little bit, identifying benefits from patterns that may not necessarily be as helpful. So in terms of this whole discussion, I think that the cognitive side of things, the thinking side of things, it can get a little abstract. So let's break it down. What does this mean? We have thoughts, right? Clearly, we have 60,000 thoughts a day, something like that. But sometimes our thoughts can then expand into emotional states. They can expand into behavioral patterns. So specifically what I mean by that, if we are thinking something that's very sad, right? We're more likely to have the emotion of sadness, depression, whatever. If we are thinking about planning something or thinking about needing to do something in the morning, I don't know about anyone on the call, but for the most part, people that I work with say, yeah, I have more difficulty staying asleep. I kind of get up, I think about what I need to do, right? So from a thought becomes a behavioral pattern. It becomes doing something. So breaking this all down, we want to just look at, are we thinking in ways that are helpful for sleep? So being relaxed, being calm, clearly, that's what we want before sleep. But we can get in the way of ourselves. It is so important to schedule a time frame, at least 30 minutes with no screens, right? So I'm hoping that this presentation isn't being taped and then watched by someone in the middle of the night or right before we're going to sleep. Because again, you want to have a time of rest, relaxation. You want to be able to free your mind from worrying, from concern, all of that. We'll kind of get to more specifics about that. But perceived benefits are often the reason that we participate in these thinking patterns. Think about that, perceived benefits. So that may be sparking some ideas in your own mind about, okay, if I'm a worrier, right, what do I get out of that? Well, actually, you might get something out of that. Think about it. Oftentimes, the more we are planning, the more we're thinking things through, the better suited we are to handle those things in general, right? I mean, we are trained, whether from an occupational or a job standpoint, or just in general of life, of being ahead of problems, right? You kind of hear these kinds of things. So basically, this is to figure out what are the perceived benefits. How can we get those perceived benefits in a different way so that our mind can relax a bit better? So instead of talking about the problems, I wanted to spend the bulk of this chat about not only the problems, but more so the solutions, how to work through these kinds of things. So we're going to go through the common thinking patterns that I've kind of come across over the past. So the first one, being frustrated, irritable, upset, right? So we're going to kind of go through a pattern of mindset, underlying belief, and then the practice that can be helpful with each one of these. But if you are one of those people that is frustrated about sleep, right? The mindset here is this, I can't sleep and this is ridiculous kind of thing, right? It's almost getting mad at yourself or mad at your life or some, in some way because you can't sleep. And the underlying belief there is I should be able to sleep well each night. Something is wrong with me. Part of this process is to look at, is that true, right? Because that thought, either the mindset, I can't sleep, this is ridiculous, you can almost think of a person who's thinking this, they're going to get upset, anxious, irritable. And this other thought, I should be able to sleep well each night, something's wrong with me. Is that true? Should you be able to sleep well? And this may sound kind of funny coming from a sleep psychologist to say that we got to level our expectations a little bit. So this shouldn't be one of those things where I'm saying that sleep shouldn't work well most nights, but no one is a perfect sleeper, including myself. I consider myself a pretty good sleeper. But it's not perfect, right? So how we get around this, a new practice, if this is you, this being frustrated kind of person, you want to actually practice getting upset. Not necessarily at night, but if this is you, I want you to get upset. And maybe not necessarily right now either, wait a bit, but notice what you're doing. So really, if this is you, you're one of those people that you notice in the middle of the night or the beginning of the night, I want you at a different time to actually sit down and start thinking in this way. Feed the fire a little bit, because you want to see and you want to experience how unbeneficial this is and kind of how ridiculous it is to a certain degree. You're beating yourself up, right? So that's one thing, asking yourself, is getting upset helping me get sleep? Is this beneficial? Is this valuable? Thinking in this way. Another thing that can be valuable if you're one of these people is to realize that if you don't sleep as well, right, that oftentimes the next day is not going to be any worse. So for example, if you're frustrated and upset and irritable and angry, you don't sleep well, you're going to feel a certain way. If you just sleep the same amount, you're probably going to feel there's no value to the frustration, the irritable, upsetness kind of component to this. And show yourself some love, really. And that may be the last thing you necessarily want to do if I'm describing you. But again, it's important to be able to realize that this is not simply based on effort, right? There's a lot of factors that are going into sleep. So show yourself some love. So let's start with the next one. So planning for tomorrow or worrying for tomorrow. These are pretty similar. The mindset is, what do I need to do tomorrow? What can I improve upon? What do I need to be ready for? So the underlying belief here is that if I don't think and prepare for tomorrow, tomorrow's not going to go well. And I want you to ask yourself, is that absolutely true? Right? So again, part of this process is creating this shift. If what you're telling yourself is, I need to prepare, I need to be one step ahead, I need to be able to figure it out, right? And if that has, if you've ever gone through a night where you didn't do those things and things still, seem to work out pretty well, maybe this belief isn't 100% true. Kind of the perceived benefit of the planning for tomorrow, getting a step ahead, is thinking that it's really beneficial and things aren't going to work out if we don't. But that's not always the case. So the practice here, one very simple, pragmatic strategy is to keep a worry journal. So the worry journal is based on exactly what it sounds like, keeping worries within. But you want to do this during the afternoon hours. You don't want to do this right before bed. Afternoon, some people schedule this right after dinner, right before dinner, or like 1 p.m. or even like 11 a.m. kind of thing. The premise is that you're getting the same perceived benefit in your mind of, okay, because clearly it's not bad to think ahead, but it is when it's keeping you up at night, it's stimulating your brain, right? So the perceived benefit of, okay, I am doing this earlier on in the day, and I get the same benefit. I can tell myself then a lot easier at night, I've already done this. You've already got this planned out, right? The worry journal should be looking at what it is that you're going to think about that night or what you're going to plan out for the next day. And most importantly, what you can actually do about it. What are you in control of? So another practice is to ask yourself, is it actually imperative that I prepare for whatever I'm thinking of or what I'm worrying about, right? Is worrying actually going to improve the outcome? And another, how many times have I been able to handle changes or challenges, and things have seemed to work out? Oftentimes when we're worrying about something or planning for something, it's because there's this perceived difficulty ahead, or something's not always, doesn't work out super well. Well, again, this comes back to, is the worrying benefiting it at all, right? Or is this more of a pattern? So let's go on to the next thinking pattern, thinking over the previous day. So the mindset is, what happened today? Some people just have this natural tendency to kind of go through the day, right? What did I do? How did things go? It's almost like an evaluation period kind of thing. So what happened today is the mindset. The underlying belief is, I need to learn from today, or what went wrong, right? Always need to, again, it's kind of like this learning from today, I'm going to be one step ahead kind of thing tomorrow. And so again, a lot of these patterns are not necessarily bad. To learn from mistakes or to identify or to have a greater sense of awareness of things is not bad. But it's when we put them into practice at night that it can be somewhat difficult. Think about it. It's hard for our mind to shut off, especially if we're doing somewhat valuable things. So the practice for this thinking strategy is, what happened, happened. You will move forward, whether you want to or not. Something that I like to think about is, this morning is just as over as 50 years ago, right? I mean, clearly, if we gauge time, it's a lot sooner, but it's just as over. right? Things happened, they happened, right? Your decision to decide what to do with the time in the present is up to you. A lot of times, people spend their present moments in the future or in the past. This is about being able to realize, okay, if I'm spending my moments when I could be relaxing or going to sleep, evaluating the day, or like the last thinking pattern, worrying about the future, planning for the future, right? That's more so thinking about the future. This is all about getting to the moment, having an acceptance of, okay, things happened, they happened. I can clearly make new decisions, new plans tomorrow, or tomorrow I can even evaluate, think through things today. But in these present moments, I want to use these moments in a different way. All right, creative solutions. I love the people with creative solution kind of thinking patterns, because usually they're kind of like the type A, I don't know, like workaholic / CEOs or bosses, or someone who's very, very into, their positions at work. This really could be anyone, but the mindset here is, what can I use to, what can I use my mind to solve now kind of thinking. So once your head hits the pillow, it's, all right, what's been going on, right? What can I figure out? And again, that stimulates our brain instead of relaxes our brain. So the underlying belief is that it is more important to solve problems than to relax and sleep. I mean, think about it. Instead of relaxing and sleeping, if you are one of those people that think through all the ways that this could be better, you could solve this or do this, right? You're basically telling yourself it's more valuable to participate in this kind of strategy than it is to relax at the moment. So how to work through this, the practice. Again, it's an acceptance kind of exercise at night. You want to get to a place where you realize that, yes, if you stayed up the whole night, I'm sure you could come up with some creative solution, some kind of beneficial idea. But this is a pro and con analysis, right? You most likely are going to be better off having this sense of acceptance and realizing, okay, I don't have everything solved in life. I'm going to relax. I'm going to focus on sleep. In the morning when I wake up, I'm ready to roll, right, if you want. But it's an acceptance, and this is, clearly only within yourself that you can get to this point of really being willing to accept and not go down these rabbit holes of trying to figure things out. Another thing that can be helpful with this kind of pattern is, if you must, in the morning, have a journal, right? If you are one of those people that believe or think that, you're really creative, or, sleep and dreams kind of give you ideas, great. Hey, once you're awake in the morning, start writing anything that you think could be beneficial down. Then at least you're getting some kind of similar perceived benefit, and that clearly once you're awake, you're awake. But key, don't do this in the middle of the night, right? So a lot of times in the middle of the night, you're so tired anyway that it may not make as much sense. In the morning, you're clearly waking up. You're still going to be cognizant. I think there's actually a very old Seinfeld episode where you'd like get up in the middle of the night and write down jokes, and it's so funny, and then they wouldn't make any sense, right? Because we're kind of in this dreaming state. So you don't want to, there's kind of a caveat to this, that you don't want to start waking up in the middle of the night to be creative either. Just be cautious of that. And part of this could be, all right, if I feel like I do not ever do this kind of thing, being creative, thinking of solutions, whatever, schedule some time. right? 5, 10 minutes to be creative at the beginning of the day, middle of the day, the end of the day. Just scheduling some time can then again decrease the need to participate in this pattern. So next one is anxiety about sleeping. The mindset here is it's going to be another one of those nights. Oh my goodness. And the underlying belief then is if I don't sleep well, tomorrow is going to be terrible. So it's interesting because, well, one, I would say, is that absolutely true? You're sensing a pattern here of kind of where my mind goes. And two, think about this. If sleep wasn't, if it wasn't one of those things that you perceived as incredibly important for efficiency the next day or incredibly important for ability to get things done or whatever, if you realize, okay, it's good, right? It's valuable, and yet it doesn't control the entire day, would there be enough or as much anxiety? So put in another way, if you realize if I don't sleep as well, I'll still be okay tomorrow. There's still things that I can appreciate and value through the day. That may help to reduce the anxiety a bit. And that's one of these practices, is to start looking at to what degree is sleep going to make or break this day. So you want to start questioning your own beliefs based on sleep. And I know, again, this probably will sound funny coming from someone whose, area of expertise, area of knowledge base is all on sleep. That's, this is what I do. And so I'm not trying to say that sleep isn't important at all. But when it comes down to if you sleep, a couple hours less a night than you would like, does it mean that the world is going to be over? No. Does it mean that you're going to feel terrific? Also no, right? So it's kind of a spectrum. You're not world is ending. You're not unicorns and rainbows, right? Somewhere more so in here. But when we can realize we're somewhat more so in the middle and that we still have choice, we still have our own mindset through the day and figuring out what we want to do, how we want to handle situations or stressors, then it takes a little bit of the pressure off of sleeping. So some of these questions I specifically think could be valuable would be, how much pressure am I putting on myself right now? Does not sleeping well equal worst day ever? And is it possible to still enjoy different aspects of life tomorrow, even if I am tired? So a racing mind is another pattern that I come into contact with very frequently. And this mindset is almost like the squirrel mindset. Thought, where it's like a dog looking at a squirrel. It's like, oh, squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. Your mind kind of is just going all around, right? So the underlying belief here is that there's lots going on, lots to think about, lots to do. So one of the ways to start working through this is deep breathing. A lot of times when people are in this kind of like racing mindset, it's not always based on anxiety or stress. Sometimes this is kind of what has just become the norm for certain people. But we want to calm the body in order to help calm the mind. So diaphragmatic breathing is a fancy term for belly breathing. But the reason it can be so beneficial is because of its value, right? So when we breathe through the diaphragm, through the stomach, as opposed to the chest, what we're doing is we're basically stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. So the opposite of the parasympathetic nervous system is the sympathetic nervous system. So if you think about someone running away in a dangerous situation, they're breathing shallowly through their chest, right? Kind of thing. That is helping to stimulate a fight, flight, freeze response so that they can get away. Increased cortisol levels, stress hormones, all of that kind of thing. We want to do the exact opposite. So diaphragmatic breathing is based on being very aware of breathing through the stomach. You want to expand the stomach almost like you have a tire around your body, and you want to expand your stomach enough so that it's like you're holding the tire, right? And it may feel a little weird, but for those of you that have the experience of or can remember seeing an infant sleeping, what happens? If they're on their back, their little belly rises, right? We're naturally inclined as infants to do this. So that's all about the calm response. So breathing deeply through the stomach helps calm the body. Another thing that you can do is start to identify your thoughts. And again, there a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is kind of introductory concepts that sometimes need some more. I mean, clearly, especially some of these, it takes some time, right? But thought identification, being more mindful, you want to become the observer of your thoughts as opposed to kind of just going along with the squirrel kind of thinking, squirrel, 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 thought, right? You want to separate yourself in a way where you can say to yourself, all right, I'm having the thought on this. Now my mind for some reason is going to a thought on this. Now I'm thinking about this. And the reason this can be helpful is because it's not like you're being dragged around for the ride of thinking about this, now worrying about this, now planning about this, now doing this, now, right? It's exhausting. It's kind of tiring just to talk about it, right? Being able to notice and be in a place of calm and realize that that is the mind, right? We are the observer of the thoughts. We are not the thoughts themselves. And visualization practices can be beneficial for this as well. Sometimes all three. So all three of these kinds of things are practices that I work with people on individually. And at first, especially at first, these can be difficult. But over time, you grow this skill set a bit. So let's go over some other mindsets. So those are all the mindsets that often have negative consequences, right? They keep us up. They stimulate our brain. What I wanted to go through as well are some kind of mindsets that I've kind of given some names to, right? And they're more in the helpful realm. So the first one is spectrum thinking. Everything is on a spectrum. I find that this is really valuable to think of everything on a spectrum in general, right? So a lot of times we can think of things as being really difficult and we push the boundaries. We think, oh my gosh, tomorrow's going to be terrible. It's going to be horrible, horrific, whatever, right? It's kind of like all or nothing, what's called black or white thinking, or a mountain out of a molehill kind of thinking. Realize that, again, if I don't get enough sleep, it's not going to be the worst day that I've ever experienced, most likely, right? There's still some good things that can go on through this day. It's a spectrum. Seeing things on a spectrum can be helpful. The next one is what I like to call the saber-toothed kitty thinking. Are we creating a saber-toothed tiger kind of problem in our life when perhaps it is more like a house cat, right? So taking this perspective of, potentially seeing ourselves in this problem from maybe 6 months and, 6 months from now can be helpful. What are you going to tell yourself about this problem that is so bothersome 6 months from now? Most often, we create saber-toothed tigers when it may be more so of a house cat kitty kind of situation. Next one is I got this thinking. Be confident in your ability to handle the next day, regardless of how much sleep you get or what happens. You're going to do it anyway, right? To a certain degree, this is realizing, okay, sleep is not the only thing that is working for me in life, right? There's other factors. There's my own sense of optimism. There is my judgment for the day. There is my decision-making ability. There is still other good things that are going on. It's not only sleep that rules the roost, so to speak. So being confident, you can still get things done. You can still work through things. You know, you may not feel super great doing them. Let's be honest. If you don't get enough sleep, you may not feel as well, but it doesn't mean that you can't do anything. Realizing that the next day you can't ever be 100% prepared anyway. You know, things always switch up. And one of these important things to remember is that you've been able to handle it in the past. You know, with the best foot forward, all the knowledge you've had, you're still able to work through the days, and when things come up, they come up and you handle it as best as you can. And, you know, for the most part, that's all you can ask of yourself. The next mindset here is the flow of water mindset, kind of this Eastern philosophy, flexible, adaptable kind of thinking patterns. So again, when we're thinking about things and they really hit home to us, they're really anxiety provoking, usually we're not being as flexible in our mind. You know, so if this kind of rang a bell for you, realize that the words we use are very powerful, you know, in what we're thinking and then how we are feeling. Because what we think about expands, right? So if we're thinking in certain ways, and if we know that what we think about isn't always true, you got to be really on point with, hey, I should be more aware of what I'm thinking about, right? And the last one here is shoulder shrug thinking. This is one of my personal favorites because a lot of times in life, things are just better if we give a shoulder shrug. You know, it would be much better if we could just, instead of innately taking in like stress or anxiety or concern or worry, you know, you want to ask yourself, is this truly as valuable as what I'm telling myself, right? I don't know. Will things be better if you sleep more? Yeah, probably. Does it mean that your life's going to be perfect? Probably not necessarily. No one's life is perfect, even with perfect sleep, even though pretty much no one gets perfect sleep, right? So again, it always comes back to this spectrum thinking. And I think of things on a spectrum as opposed to if I get good sleep, everything will be perfect. No, not necessarily, right? You can still handle things without good sleep. So some final tips. I talk about these, pretty much all of these presentations that I give. Regularity is very key, especially in times when schedules have changed up. You got to make sure that it's not a variable pattern. Sometimes going to sleep at midnight, sometimes going to sleep at 9, sometimes sleeping until 8, sometimes getting up at 5, sometimes till noon, whatever, right? Regularity is always helpful regardless. All the good sleep hygiene tips, you know, not being on our phones, the only sleeping in bed, sleep, sex, or sick kind of stuff in bed more specifically, all of that, right? Responding differently, all of what we've talked about are cognitive patterns, and it's based on responding differently, basically in your mind, right? This is building a new skill, which is specifically about mindset. So trying a new pattern out, giving this stuff a shot. What do you got to lose, right? The most beneficial aspect of this is not, something that I can tell you. It is your experience. So trying this out is very important. And I did mention a bit in some of the, slides here, having a sense of acceptance is important, right? You have to be willing to fully, right? And only internally if you're willing to make this commitment to try out something new, right? So if you kind of tell yourself in your mindset, I'll try something for like 2 minutes. It's not going to make any change. You have to have a sense of acceptance that I really got to try something fully to experience it. And this last thing is, again, this worry journal, writing things out. It's a very simple and yet pragmatic strategy that can be helpful. So let me get back to see if there are any questions here.
That was really good. I didn't get to listen last time, so that was so good. Well, for those of you in the webinar, if you guys have questions, you could do the chat straight to myself or Dr. Frose, or the Q&A, I think, is private. So please go ahead and type as questions. I wanted to mention a few things, if you don't mind.
Please do.
So you mentioned self-care and love in the very beginning of the presentation. And one of the things that really helped me when I was going through my breast cancer and insomnia became like a real thing for me for the first time in my life for obvious reasons. And I wrote a menu of things that I really enjoyed doing, like listening to a book or listening to a podcast or getting a massage or getting a pedicure. I mean, some of these things we can't really do right now anyway, but I think it's important to find, like taking a bath. That was a big thing. Body brushing. Who even knew that was a thing? Like you can buy one of those $4 brushes on Amazon, and just in the shower, brushing your body is very relaxing. So like make a list of things that are self-love and that, do make you feel good about yourself. Maybe it's watching the sunset or watching the sunrise or taking your dog for a walk or sitting with your dog, on your lap or sitting with your partner. Whatever makes you feel good, write a list, because when you do get to that, when you're practicing the frustration and it happens, if you go to that list where it's written down and you pick something, it's kind of an antidote to that moment and anxiety. Is that kind of, what you would agree to being a good practice?
Well, I mean, I think that what you're talking about is one of those things that a lot of people have difficulty with in terms of, they're like, well, if I don't watch TV right before bed, what am I going to do, right? I mean, so this planning pleasurable activities, realizing that is also valuable. What you're talking about, all of those things seem so much more valuable than what I think most people are kind of used to, kind of like this, I'll just watch TV for an hour or two, it doesn't even matter what it is, kind of thing. Like that kind of stuff, is so important to really what truly drives your level of happiness. So
okay, so as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reason why people like to watch TV is it puts their brain down this other path, this thought process of what's happening on TV, and they're not thinking about all these things that cause them, stress and anxiety, like how their day went. So one of the things that I learned in my yoga teacher training, so for those of you who don't know, I do yoga nidra. It's yoga for sleep. It's kind of a practice where we guide you through, and we do these 3 things. You talked about 3 practices, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like all the 3. We use muscle tension relaxation. We use imagery, breath, all kinds of breath work. I love how powerful our breath is. And so one of the things that of cards that I would design, like the guided meditation. I'll be teaching that in August, so watch for that on the August newsletter. But is rewind, okay? So rewind through your day, but do it with your eyes closed, focusing on your breath, but watch it as if you're sitting in a movie theater. So your day, start off when you woke up. What did that look like? You know, how long did it take you to get out of bed? You know, what did you eat for breakfast? Imagine yourself, you know, eating breakfast. What did you eat? Who were you with? And so you go through your whole day. And the idea is most people, by the time they get to lunch, are probably asleep because you're rewinding through your day, but you're focusing on your breath and you're relaxing. And it's not like you're thinking about it and you're trying to solve your problems, but if you watch it as if you're watching it in a movie theater, it's kind of like watching TV. You're just creating your own. I worked with a lady one time who had a really hard time putting her book down. She would read and read and read, and she wouldn't go to sleep because she just wanted to see what was happening in the book. And so I told her, why don't you try putting the book down the minute you start to feel tired, and then get into bed and start imagining and playing out in your own mind what you think would happen in the book next. But my question to you is that too much thinking? Is that too, because you're playing it out? Like, is that too much thought process? Because you're the expert, I am not.
Well, it's so funny because, again, the goal here is to never completely diminish thoughts. You know what I mean? We'll never get there. No, there is no monk sitting on top of a mountain somewhere that is having like no thoughts for days on it, right? It's not possible. But the more pragmatic goal, I think, for most of us is to have somewhat simple thoughts and not this barrage of like thought, got to do this, worry, concern, race, you know, kind of thing. And so what you're talking about, it seems like, is a much more simple, relaxing, easy going kind of approach, you know? So visualizing in the book what the story would be, you know, seems like a much better approach than a lot of other ways to go to sleep.
There is another practice that I teach in, I've only taught it once, and I did it at a breast cancer retreat with all girls that were just finished with breast cancer, and it's called the temper tantrum. And so when you talked about practicing getting frustrated, it made me think of the temper tantrum. And it's basically like you just get on the floor and you just you have a temper tantrum like a 2-year-old, and you just kick and you scream. And when you're done, you just do that for like a minute. And then when you're done, you just close your eyes and then just relax and start to feel what's going on in your body. And there's all this energetic movement. And if you focus on your breath and kind of start to relax and think about all your body parts, you know, start at your head or start at your feet and work your way through your body, that's a really great thing to do to relax too. Because when you do that temper tantrum, it's a beautiful thing. It's kind of crazy, but these girls were like so emotional when we did that. And they were like, oh, why didn't we ever get permission to do that now? You know, as adults, like we just needed to do that. So anyway, I thought it was I loved the freedom from frustration and the mindset is so important. And it's just so hard to learn it sometimes. And so if you guys are out there struggling, Dr. Frose does, you know, an amazing job at his, you know, at Valley Sleep Center, cognitive behavioral therapy. He's doing telemedicine right now, which is really great because your insurance is covering it. So if you guys want to learn more, go to valleysleepcenter.com. You can click on schedule an appointment and pick insomnia. That's him.
That's me.
That's him. So,
Hi.
all right. No questions, I don't think. Amazing. Nobody has questions. Is it allowing people that, I guess we just answered all the questions. See how great you are?
I think it's funny because last time we did this, there's questions for about 30 minutes. So maybe
Was there really?
Have gone
wow.
away. Oh.
Well, and you know, if you do have a question after, you're going to get an email from me after this is over. Just reach out. We'll get you an answer. Okay? All right. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Frose.
Take care.
Bye.